Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We've started the webinar. For those who don't know me, I'm Rick Page. I'm Dean of the Larner College of Medicine. I couldn't be more pleased and proud to welcome you all to our 7th annual State of Research at the Larner College of Medicine and celebration of research excellence. I got to be here for the 3rd one, and wow, time flies. It's also really exciting. The first couple, I guess, were in the early days. And now we're back together, but actually thanks to what we've learned by Zoom and all the other video conferencing, we are streaming out beyond what we ever could in the first couple of years. This event grew out of our strategic commitment to recognize accomplishments in research in our college and academic health system. I'm pleased the celebration brought together just yesterday the work of graduate students and their mentors, along with contributions of our postdoctoral associates, as well as members of the new Center for Shared Biomedical Resources, which is now in the process of moving into the first floor of the Firestone Medical Research Building. And what a time for us to be celebrating research. For those of you who could be there or see it online or see the posts of the ribbon cutting for the Firestone Medical Research Building, it was really a special event last Thursday. And I was so glad to be able to celebrate with so many of you. As during that presentation, you heard from a number of your colleagues speak to the what might happen in the Firestone Research Building, speaking to the priorities of our university toward research, emphasizing our research strengths, student success, and our land grant mission. And really that building checks all the boxes in terms of the missions of our college as well as our university. This new building comes, and today's conference comes, in the setting of record levels of funding coming to our college and our university. We're on a roll. And I need to make note that all of your efforts in terms of garnering success in acquiring extramural research funding, that comes from a huge amount of work. It always comes from a huge amount of work. The work has been greater and harder, frankly, in the last few years. There are issues throughout our university as well as throughout the entire country and world that have made it tougher to hire people, to retain people, to get work done. And in that setting, I think we need to all be grateful. And I would suggest we give a round of applause for all the scientists who have worked so darn hard to get this work done. Congratulations. And I should mention, with our Vice President for Research here, we are committed to making it less hard for you to get the work done as we aspire to even greater contributions and, in the end, better health for patients throughout our community and the world. Now, as we kick off this special event, I want to welcome Vice President for Research for UVM, Dr. Kirk Dombrowski. Growing and sustaining our successful research enterprise here at our college can only come about with strong cross-campus collaboration. And we're fortunate to have such a connection with Dr. Dombrowski and UVM's Office of the Vice President for Research. Kirk joined us in March of 2020. Great timing, an interesting time, to say the least. And he's been a very important partner and supporter to us, just as we've worked through the early days of how we can do research, how we can support the scientists who were supporting our ability to provide vaccination and care for patients. And he's been really an outstanding partner to us at the college. I'm very pleased he's joined us again for this year's celebration. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kirk Dombrowski.
Thank you, Rick. That's a very kind introduction. And Yeah, March 2020. I tell people I'm a sailor, so my sense of direction is great. My sense of timing is terrible. But we've done great things. This is the first time I've been able to do this event in person, and it's good because now I feel like I know a lot of you, and that shows that despite 3 years of various kinds of lockdown and interruption, I've gotten to know quite a number of the faculty individually. Sometimes for all the right reasons, and sometimes because they're chasing me down the hallway. And that's okay, because that's part of the job. I learned in my first year here, don't come up and brag about all the accomplishments of LCOM, because that's what the senior associate dean is going to do. And if you steal his thunder, they get really mad. So I'll tell you a few of the other things that we're doing. One of the, first, let me say congratulations. And I'm super proud of the work of this group. We have done some amazing things. We've raised research levels, yes. But we've done more than that. We've raised corporate partnerships. We have SBIR grants coming into the college. We have a BSL-3 facility that has people clamoring to get in the door. We have lab facilities that I think are on our building. We've opened up the new ungulate facility, and we have so many exciting new areas of research going on. And my office's job is to try and support that through ways that maybe go beyond what it takes to get another NIH grant out the door. We're working in corporate partnerships, and one of the most promising things we have going right now is a potential partnership with Agilent that would help make us a beta test facilities for some of the most advanced medical research instruments that are available in the country right now. We have other corporate partnerships that we're working on as well, and our licensing goals are to double our licensing again next year. We've doubled it year on year, 2 years in a row. If we can double it again, that'll be a significant accomplishment. We want to try and get corporate partnerships up to about 8 to 10% of our total extramural funding. That would put us on a par with most medical schools and put us ahead of most universities. We're at about 6% right now. So these are the kind of areas that we have been trying to do outside of the ordinary work of trying to do our job better at research administration. The other piece I think that we really can bring to the table that hasn't been the case in the past is bringing the rest of the research community on campus up to your level. And it's an interesting idea. Maybe you'll buy it, maybe you won't. But my sense is that as the other side of the campus grows in its research capacity, it makes it easier and better and faster and smarter to do your jobs. And we've really done a lot. It was a sleepy place, and I don't get the credit. I'll take it, but I don't get the credit. But we've had a real change across campus and a lot of research growth, to the point now where the rest of the campus is probably 50% of the research enterprise, and the College of Medicine is 50% of the research enterprise. And that's the way that we can get you more partners, more opportunities, more different kinds of grants and projects that we can put out. And I think that that's one of the best things that we can do for the College of Medicine, is to give you a raft of high quality, aggressive research partners across the campus. And that's one of our bigger goals. We do a lot of other things that are in process. We're meeting with Rick and with Richard regularly to try and talk about process improvement. And we understand that where those priorities come from and how important they are. But really, this is a moment to just say congratulations. And on behalf of the president and everyone else, we're with you. We're building around you as fast as we can. And we just really appreciate everything you're doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice President Dabrowski. And we really appreciate your comments. First of all, making note of the really proud tradition we have in this college. And what I see likewise is really gratifying in seeing the rest of the campus aspire to research excellence. And that only increases the number of collaborations we could develop. In a little while, we're going to spotlight research excellence with awards for scientists throughout our college, as well as the UVM Health Network Medical Group, and look forward to doing that, as well as identifying excellence in terms of mentorship and training that fosters the development of the scientists of the future. But first, we're going to reflect on where we are today and a little bit on the last year and where we might be going. To do that, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Richard Galbraith. Richard is not a stranger to many people here and has stepped into the vacancy left by Gordon Jensen beautifully, and I'm really grateful for that. Dr. Galbraith was appointed as professor of medicine back in 1995 and has served as associate dean for patient-oriented research initially, and subsequently as associate dean for research and as interim senior associate dean for research during 2014. In 2014, he became UVM's vice president for research, after which he subsequently served as co-director of the UVM Cancer Center until July 2021. We just won't let Dr. Galbraith retire. And I'm tremendously grateful for him stepping in to allow really a seamless transition during our search for the next senior associate dean for research that we will be announcing within the next week or two. I'm very grateful for his leadership. I look forward to his words as he summarizes in terms of the college and our accomplishments over the last year. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Galbraith.
Thank you, Dean Page, and thank you, Kurt, for your comments. It's a pleasure to be here. As you said, I came and I was an associate dean, and then 27 years I'm a senior associate dean. So that's been my rise over 27 years. Not even a senior one, just an interim senior one. So it's a pleasure to be here, and I want to go as quickly as I can, but as thoroughly as I can, which is a difficult thing to do, over the achievements and the state of what's happening in the College of Medicine. The College of Medicine has obviously had a lot of activity going on, and probably of all the things that have gone on, this makes a noise when I press it. Let's try that again. There's a lot been happening, and as Dean Page mentioned, one of the most notable things was the opening of the Firestone building last week. This is a monumental achievement. Couldn't have happened without the largesse of Dr. Stephen Firestone, who's up there on the screen on the left. You can see the building and the labs within it. It's a 46,000 square foot modular research space, which is dedicated to the idea of dynamic team science, not department science, but team science. And it opened last week, as I said. There are 4 levels. Level 1 will be the Center for Biomedical Shared Resources under the direction of Doug Targis. Level 2 will support the Vermont Lung Center under the direction of Ann Dixon. Level 3 will support the UVM Cancer Center under the direction of Randy Holcomb. And level 4 will support the relatively new Center for Cardiovascular and Brain Health under the direction of Mark Nelson and Mary Cushwick. It's an opportune moment to talk about that first Center for Biomedical Shared Resources, partly because it's going to be the first part of the building that's going to be occupied, and partly because it represents something quite novel for the College of Medicine, which is really the brainchild of my predecessor, Gordon Jensen, who conceived of the idea of taking 4 separate cores located in different parts of the medical center, and in one case, proteomics not even in the medical center, and locating them all in one place on the ground floor so they could be interactive and interoperative, and also managed to obtain a $5.6 million grant to ensure that that could happen. So thank you for that insight, Gordon. And so these 4 cores you can see up there: flow cytometry and cell sorting, Roxana Del Rio, the Vermont Integrated Genomic Resource under Julie Dragon, the proteomics resource under Ying-Wei Lan, which is really a part of the Vermont Biomedical Research Network, but that's part of it is going to be in this building, and the Microscopy Imaging Center under Doug, who's going to be the overall director of this center. So it's going to do all the things that it's done for a long time, but it's going to do something which I think is new and exciting, and that is spatial omics, which was a relatively new concept to me, and it may be a relatively new concept to some of you. And the idea behind it is it allows for the integration of omics and imaging data to identify the spatial localization of molecular subpopulations within a cell. Now, we all know that all of our science, ever since we can remember, has been reductionist. We keep going smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. This, I think, is the beginning of a turnaround. And although we all learned in nursery school that all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again, this approach is actually going to be the first step in putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. We're going to take all this information and in a three-dimensional way, incorporate it and make it interactive and interoperative. I think it's a very exciting time, and I think it's very cool that Doug and his colleagues are putting this together for the whole college to utilize at this time. So on to the mainstay of how we're evaluating, which is our peer-reviewed publications. 1,045 peer-reviewed publications in highly respected journals with high citation indexes, an increase from the previous year, and made possible, as was mentioned earlier, by a spectacular increase in funding. And the college is now up to $108 million. That's excluding any kind of philanthropy, which adds more on top of that. So $108 million in extramural funding, which, as Kirk has said, is approximately half of the entire funding of the university. And so congratulations, as the dean said, to all of you who did that work and put in those grants under these difficult times and during COVID and all the rest of it. You are to be commended. So what does that money buy? Well, there are 4 huge grants that are all $20 million over 5 years in the IDEA series. And you can see them up there, the Vermont Center for Behavioral Health, Translational Global Infectious Disease Research, and the Vermont Center for Cardiovascular and Brain Health, as well as the Northern New England Clinical and Translational Research Network. What have they been up to? The Vermont Center for Behavior and Health accomplishments. Stephen Higgins has been nominated for numerous awards, national awards, for his work. Alexandra Potter and Hugh Garavan received a $5.5 million grant for the phase 2 portion of healthy brain and child development, an enormously important national study. Richard Rawson is a leader in the center and the Vermont Center for Rural Addiction, was awarded the American Society of Addiction Medicine Presidential Award, and Sherry Kadanga received the inaugural Woolmouth Fellowship Award. So this center is alive and well and doing great work. Translational Global Infectious Disease Research Center. They recruited 2 new junior faculty arriving in 2023, Dr. John Openshaw in medicine and Dr. David Bernstein in STEMS Biomedical Engineering. They've submitted their phase 2 renewal of the COBRA Award, which will due to be started in August 23. And the new project leaders now in phase 2, Dr. Dev Mujumbar in surgery and Sarah Nowick in pathology. They've also initiated a clinician-focused pilot program. The initial awardees, Chris Brady in ophthalmology and Delia Horn in pediatrics, and continued the programs to train clinician researchers in clinical research, clinical trials, NIH grant applications, and so on. So again, a very vibrant center. And our newest COBRA, the Vermont Center for Cardiovascular and Brain Health, under the direction of Mary Cushman and Mark Nelson. You can see here 25 manuscripts over 2 years by the initial 4 project directors, and remarkably 30 people in a pipeline, 30 people investigators coming from 5 different UVM colleges, which I think underscores the opening comments of both of our senior leaders that working across the colleges is to be encouraged and is a very beneficial thing for all concerned. There are two cores there: study design and molecular epidemiology and customized physiology and imaging. And the award of very generous $200,000 grants over 2 years, pilot awards to Matthew Caporizo and Mansour Gurji. I'm sorry, I probably said your name wrong, but Gurji, thank you. And then these are the four initial project directors, Drs. Harras in pharmacology, Chung in medicine, Purdy in pharmacology, and Peters in Department of Rehabilitation, Movement Science, again in the College of Nursing and Health Science. And the last IDEA program, which is the New England Clinical and Translational Research Network, directed by Gary and his colleagues. They funded their grant for another 5 years, another $20 million grant. They have pandemic-related food insecurity grants and cancer-compromised epidemic control, and work in many areas, pilot projects, cardiovascular, cancer, COVID pandemic, critical care, and addiction. I'm not going to read through all of these, but this is an opportune time to point out that all of these slides will be archived. So if you want to go and get details or download any of this information after this talk, then they'll be there and available to you. So the Vermont Cancer Center, they have a new director, Dr. Randy Holcomb, who was recruited recently. He's also the oncology division chief and holds the Walter Juckett Chair in Cancer Research. He's been very busy. He and the dean secured 2 new grants from the Juckett Foundation. And he's assisted with the recruitment of 17 faculty positions, not all in College of Medicine, not all directly in cancer, but in both clinical and fundamental basic science in 4 different colleges. And again, emphasizes the fact that this is this is pan-institutional. The Cancer Center is a UVM center. It's not simply a College of Medicine center. And I think that's the way of the future for a lot of our centers. They created new career development programs. The initial holders of this, Alyssa Thomas and Kara Landry, established a very important program in community outreach and engagement, which is something that our Cancer Center has needed to work on in terms of its eventual designation, and reformatted the Community Advisory Board, and enhanced cancer research training and education, including the recently held Women's Health and Cancer Conference, high school programs for biomedical science, and Cancer Summer Research Program. So the Cancer Center, well on the way to being redesignated. Right? The Lung Center has continued to grow very strongly under the leadership of Anne Dixon, who was nominated as named as a university scholar. And both David Kavinsky and Jason Bates received awards from the American Thoracic Society, a presidential citation, and a Robert Crapo Achievement Award in pulmonary diagnostics. They have a basic and translational T32 training grant and multiple NIH and DoD grants, including industry funding. It's a very well-funded center. Produced over 80 publications, 1 book and multiple chapters. And they will be, at least in part, moving into the 2nd floor of the classroom building that we talked about earlier on. Graduate students and postdoctoral research. As we all know, without these 2 categories, not much research gets done. There are now 4 NIH T32 training grants and 1 Department of Education training grants. The T32, the Hugh Garavan Training in Complex Systems and Data Science approaches. Stephen Higgins in Training in Behavioral Pharmacology of Drug Abuse. Gary Ward, Vermont Immunology Infectious Disease Training Grant, and Matt Pointer with the multidisciplinary training in lung biology. So there are currently 92 students from the Cell and Molecular Biology program, Neuroscience and Biomechanical Engineering PhD programs, And working today in the Lana Labs, there are 34 postdoctoral students who, along with graduate students, have contributed to well over 100 peer-reviewed publications. So strong presence here for graduate students and postdoctoral research. Medical student research has also increased substantially under the directorship of Renee Stapleton, who has increased the number of people who participate in this program. They get some funding, and there were 49 funded participants this last year, which is a huge increase on previous years. And the Vermont Cancer Center also runs summer research with a different funding mechanism. And of course, students continue to be engaged in public health research through the auspices of Jan Carney and her program in the first year in medical school. And there's also a relatively new internally funded research gap year fellowship between years 3 and 4, which people can apply for. And this is an important aspect of medical school training, because it's important to show that medical students have the opportunity to participate in research as they go through medical school. It's a requirement for the national associations. So we mentioned the core, core's facilities, but we also would have to pay respect to biomedical statistics, which is the core of many of our work as we go to publish it or as we go to design it. Peter Callis is now the core director of that group of statisticians. And it's important, particularly for people who are relatively new, to realize that you can get up to 5 hours of free assistance for grant applications for LCOM faculty members or trainees to try and really make sure that their application contains well-reasoned and well-developed statistical models and data acquisition, which is increasingly important as the NIH increasingly demands better accountability of data and data storage and analysis. And in that respect, the libraries are beginning to work to try and make more resources available to help with that in the future. Clinical research continues to thrive under the directorship of Kim Lubis, who runs 2 major components. One is the Office of Clinical Trials Research, which is responsible for all the regulatory contact and budget support for industry-related clinical trials. 112 currently agreements with research staff that support 119 projects with 66 unique PIs. And she also is responsible for Clinical Research Center, which is an inpatient research unit containing outpatient extended stay rooms, research nurses, bionutrition, kitchen, physiology support, and nursing support. And over the last year, 77 projects supporting 48 unique PIs and nearly 2,000 outpatient visits. So that, for those of you who aren't familiar, is located in the medical center. It is available to use by us and is really a college of medicine facility. She's also responsible for supervising the research navigators, a relatively new position here at the College of Medicine. You can see by the bar graphs how the utilization and repeat utilization of these services has gone up and up, and you probably can't read all the services on the right. But if you've ever done any clinical research, you know that the amount of regulations and paperwork and things that you have to do, and they have to do just right before you continue, just grows exponentially. And this is a fantastic resource for anybody, even if you're already familiar with clinical research. But if you're not, it would be really foolhardy not to consult one of these navigators who can really help guide you through a lot of the maze of regulatory paperwork that's required. And lastly, from Kim, a lot of research, education, and training initiatives. She started the Fundamentals in Conduct of Clinical Research, whereby all clinical research coordinators must go through a training program. That was started in 2020. She's conducted 20 sessions with 206 individuals who go through intensive training and have a competency assessment at the end. And that's very important because we can't have people who don't know anything about clinical research just coming in off the street and being put in a situation where they're working with patients or normal volunteers. And the Research Professionals Network, which is in collaboration with Boston University, University of Florida, and Medical University of South Carolina, for ongoing professional development and training with monthly meetings during the academic year. So again, it's through really the work of Gordon Jensen, who put into place several financial incentives for faculty at the College of Medicine. 3 are listed here. The outcome was budgeted $100,000 annually to provide some effort for PI salary for the NIH CAP to support the development and submission of training grants or other major institutional grants. Secondly, the Office of Graduate Education and Postdoctoral Training can help you with the assembly of the tables for T32 applications. And for those of you who've had anything to do with it strikes fear into your heart to hear the word tables, because you have no idea how detailed there are and how many there are and how impossibly difficult it is to put together if you don't have somebody who has that information at their fingertips. And then also we'll provide 5% effort for PIs of T32 training grants, funded T32 training grants. So these support mechanisms are already active. They've already been associated with successful grants, and they will continue to be in the future. We've also resumed the regular pilot research funds for internal pilot and bridge support programs. And that call goes out twice a year, and I'm grateful to Matt Wargo, who's the chair of that committee that goes through the process of reviewing all of those grant applications. So thank you, Matt, and thank you, the committee. And also a new initiative from the CBSR grant will be to have some pilot funding, which is specifically targeted at developing new kinds of core methodologies. So you work with a core to try and find a new way of using the core, a new methodology, a new assay, or whatever it happens to be. So that will be available in 2023. And the Research Incentive Program, which is really the way of giving some money back to successful investigators. There's a $1 million pool, and every year it's added up what the percentage of total F&A brought in by each qualified faculty member, and they get a slice of that $1 million in proportion to the amount of F&A they bring in. And that's unrestricted funds, and it can be even used to pay yourself a bonus. So if you didn't have a sufficient incentive to write a grant, there's another. And the payments for FY52 will be coming out shortly when the calculations will be done.
You said 52.
52?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're waiting.
Yeah. You don't want to rush these things. Okay, so what about the future? Obviously, the College of Medicine, the Dean's Office, a lot of chairs, a lot of people were involved in putting together a document, Vision 2025, and this is the research component of that document. Obviously, we want to improve infrastructure and provide sustainable shared resources, which we talked about. We want to try and align bioinformatics and biostatistics more. They're sort of separate domains right now. We need to enhance data processing and storage, particularly in regards to the interaction between the College of Medicine and the UVM Medical Center, so that we have bi-directional flow of information. That is going to be very important for our ability to take the advances, the biomedical research advantages, and actually have them be useful in the medical arena, and have problems identified in the medical arena attacked at the basic science level. Obviously, we focus on current strengths and future opportunities, support innovation and entrepreneurship. Particularly important to strengthen mentorship and career development for faculty, students, and trainees, so that we can maximize faculty recruitment, but also retention. very important that we retain people that we get to come here and we don't just train them up to be really good scientists and then they go somewhere else. So the retention issue is going to be very important in the future. And obviously we want to diversify our funding portfolio for research, looking at all different ways of doing that. The days where it was only the NIH are over. We have to go to wherever the money is, including commercial outfits. We have to think about IP and commercialization of our own IP. We have to find funding wherever we can find it. So it's not my role as interim senior associate dean for research to give you any more specifics about the future. That will come when Dean Page has finished negotiating with whoever is going to be my successor. And I'm sure there'll be many opportunities for you to have discussions with that individual when they're here to make these future goals more granular. And I know you're not a shy crowd and you are definitely speaking up to that person and letting them know your thoughts, which is right and proper. So that brings to an end my overview. And we're now going to shift gears and move into the Dean's Excellence in Research Awards. So obviously we've seen all of this good work and all of this infrastructure and all of this people that are facilitatory and funding and all the rest of it to help people to do research. Now we're going to focus on people who have been elected or reviewed by their peers as outstanding in particular categories. So you as a group, as a collective, have made decisions about who these outstanding individuals are, and we're going to run through them. The first one has actually been given out already because it was the 2022 UVM Medical Alumni Association Distinguished Graduate Alumni Award that we went to Elizabeth Kovacs, who is a PhD in '84 in cell biology and is now Professor of Surgery and Director of the Burn Research and Alcohol Research Programs at the University of Colorado. That award was given out already during an alumni week, and so I'm just making sure that everybody knows about that. And now we're going to move on to some graduate student awards, and for that I'm going to turn it over to Associate Dean Chris Kelly.
Thank you, Richard. So yesterday we had our annual research showcase for graduate student presentations. These are short 15-minute talks, and we had two divisions, a senior division for graduate students above their third year in graduate school and a junior division for those in their first couple of years of graduate school. And so now I'd like to announce both first and second place for the junior division. So first place goes to Kaneo Ikea in Nimrat Chatterjee's lab. Kaneo, congratulations. Yeah. And second place goes to Ali Morrissey in John Salagianis's lab. And I don't think she could stay for this. Am I right? Yep. Okay. So in the senior division, first place went to Annalise Whitaker and Jason Botton's lab. Annalise here. She's with her, so she's with her one-year-old somewhere more important. And second place went to Bay Vager, who works with A.L. Amiel, who is a joint appointment in the Department of Medicine. Is Bay here? There we go. And congratulations to all the participants yesterday. It really was an amazing show. So, and with that, I will turn things back over to Richard.
Thank you, Chris, and congratulations to those awardees. So now we're going to move into the main body of the awards. First is to the Medical Student Outstanding Research Publication, awarded to Jennifer Holland, mentor Valerie Harder, PhD in the Department of Pediatrics. Is she here? The second award is to the graduate student with the Outstanding Research Publication, Alex Thompson, PhD, mentor Jason Stump. Postdoctoral Fellow, Outstanding Research Publication, Nicholas Plug, I'm not sure how you pronounce your name, I'm sorry if I butchered it, mentor Mark Nelson, pharmacologist. Next is to the resident with outstanding research publication, Serena Murphy, MD, nominated by Michelle Snowden and Brian Quaid, who I don't think is here. Congratulations. Let's point out that we do accept it on behalf of the awardees, so it's important. Next, Clinical Research Coordinator staff, Stephanie Burns from the Vermont Lung Center. Next up, Scientific Research Laboratory staff, Scott Hyde, Vermont Cancer Center. I really do that. Nominated by Julie Wright. Okay, Dean's Clinical Trials Research Award, Renee Stapleton. The Dean's Research Mentorship Award, Jane Leanne for Biochemistry. Okay, nominated by Gary. The Dean's Rising Star New Investigator Award at the Assistant Professor level, Ellen McGinnis, PhD in Psychiatry. Dean's Mid-Career Investigator Award, Associate Professor, tie between Valerie Harder, PhD in Pediatrics, and Matthew Wago, PhD in MNG. And the Dean's Research Laureate Award the highest award we give to Sylvia Dubry, PhD in MNG, who's unfortunately not here with us today, but wherever you are, congratulations. So that brings the presentations to an end. No, it doesn't. You're looking at me like it doesn't. Oh, yes, of course. They don't seem to be here. What's that? I'll read it right off the plot. Thank you.
She should be.
So, the University of Vermont Health Network Medical Group Junior Researcher of the Year, Jessica Heath. What do you have to apply? We got one more time. University of Vermont Health Network Senior Researcher of the Year, Gary Ann, Professor of Surgery. The Health Network Medical Group Award Research Growth. And with the
It is not. He is an EPR.
Okay. And UVM Network Medical Group Innovation Grant, PI is the Marjorie Mine, and the 20I Carol was not surprised. I think. So it doesn't take much imagination for you to understand how important it is to have people like Liz here. Because otherwise it can become somewhat of a debacle at the end. And Erin Montgomery, who the two of them who put this together, this whole show, and did all the work in tabulating the awardees and everyone. And then my good friend Chris, who really, without him, it would have been a scandal, because I didn't know how to do it, and he interested. So he had done it before, and he helped put all the slides together and the slides without details, and was there, even though he was actually at sunset when we were doing the post last year. So thank you very much. So I just want to close by saying something which is probably very foreign, but I'm going to say it anyway. So in the 27 years that I've been here, I had my own data science lab, I research infrastructure. I advocated for research in the Senate. I was in your position for a while. I was in your position for a while. And all the way, I didn't see the wood for the trees anymore. The ordinary, extraordinary became ordinary. Because you see it every day, and you see all the clinical work and the research work and the education work that's going on. You can tell, yeah, it's just what we do. And then when I retired, and I did actually retire. And I got another name after the bearer. But when I came back, suddenly the ordering was extraordinary again, because I hadn't seen it for a while. And so if there's anything I can urge you to do, it's to not fall into the trap of taking for granted the extraordinary things you do. Because they are extraordinary. And this presentation is inspiration to me. And I'm frankly somewhat awed by standing in front of a group of people who do all the things that you do on a daily basis. So I think you should be very proud of yourself. And I think you should occasionally look in the mirror and realize who you are and what you contribute to the world, because it's huge. And my mantra has always been, today's treatment is yesterday's research. Today's research is tomorrow's treatment. So congratulations to you all. So the last thing I have to do is remind you that last year's research knowledge, Yvonne Jansen-Henniger will be presenting her talk tomorrow in this same room at 12 noon. So I urge you to come to that. And I'd also point out that we have a reception in the whole gallery, which you're all invited. And along the way, I'm sure you'll no doubt want to stop and look at some of the posters that are displayed. And I'll hope to see you all in the whole gallery. Thank you very much.